think it must be about a year now that I've had the Fender FR12, the Tone Master. Now, at the time when this came out, it was sort of overshadowed by the Tone Master Pro, which I think caught headlines more because of the way it looked, and you know, people are very interested in new modelers and skeuomorphic designs and all that sort of stuff that the Tone Master Pro had going for it. As time has worn on, I think you might see from other folks in the comments, hopefully, their experience with the FR12 as well. And I think people with modelers, all of the different types of modelers, are starting to, or have come round to the idea that the FR12 is actually quite a cool piece of kit. And relative to its price, I think performs possibly best in class.
This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
I can report sort of two problems that I've had with the FR12. So one is that you need to, much like the power cab, be sending it quite a lot of signal if you're going to be pushing it up to sort of stage levels of a real amplifier. So if you had like a drummer playing with you as well, or another guitarist, you really need to make sure that you're bumping the output of your modeler as high as possible, because it does like to see a high input. Otherwise you just won't be able to get the, what was it, 1000 watts out of this, because you'll just be, the signal going in is not high enough. That's one thing. The second thing happened yesterday for the first time. I started pushing it back on its legs and turned around partway through Don't Stop Believing and noticed that the amp was no longer facing it. Had sort of throughout the song just shifted to that direction and pointing directly at the singer. I'm sure she wasn't super impressed. So those are the two things. So I think it may be because I was sort of chugging through the verses of that tune, or pre-chorus. Yeah, and something to do with that floor there being particularly shiny, and it maybe being a little bit lighter than a traditional Fender amp with a kickback stand. I think it's a nice idea, but if there's not enough weight there to actually hold it still, then it's going to kind of move around, sort of like a kick drum does or something like that, right? So what you get with the FR12 is a FR speaker, which on the continuum of PA speaker to guitar speaker is more in the direction of guitar speaker than almost any other FRFR that I've experienced. On the, you know, FR side, you've got things like the head rush, which are like a rebadged alto and slightly readjusted. You've got, you know, a standard kind of monitor, and you know, people talk about QSCs as being a really good choice for this. Yamaha DXRs, RCFs, the alto stuff some people like as well. I think in terms of cost, you get quite a lot for your money with that sort of thing. So yeah, that on that side you've got things that are basically built like a PA speaker or like a monitor. And then on the other side, like this, is just basically a traditional guitar cab, but with the FR speaker and a tweeter. So I think it's the closest that I've experienced to it actually being more of an amp-like performance. The other notable shout out is to like Laney, who make quite a heavy FR speaker, but people seem to like those as well. If it's good enough for Guthrie, it might be good enough for you, right? Yeah, Laney are the other ones, and they even make a 4x12, which I will come on to in a sec. The other thing with this is that you've got a very simple EQ on the front, And you know, basically that works as you'd expect. You've got volume, which typically I would run between halfway and 3/4. We've got treble, middle and bass, which I normally would start with them at halfway up and then cut, which depending on the room, again, you might want to start with that sort of at halfway, but off you're going to get the tweeter giving you quite a lot of stuff, and up you're going to start to cut out the tweeter, which can be a little bit of a secret to getting things sounding a little bit more smooth and a bit less modelerish and a bit less fizzy. Then on the back here as well, you've got an XLR combi thingy, well, an XLR and a combi jack here, so your input can be jack or XLR, and you can just plug from an output of a modeler here and then output that back to front of house, so that's kind of useful. You don't necessarily need a separate output for that, so that's cool. Now the thing is, for the amount of space this is going to take up in a car, you know, this is I think the same size as a Hot Rod Deluxe, that sort of thing. And especially when you think about the Laney 4x12, I think by that point, and I think you might see some people in the comments that have tried this, I've certainly encountered this in the comments before, where it's like, I tried really hard to get this modelling thing to work, tried FRFR speakers, and some people, I think my buddy Ryan Davey even gigs 2 of these sometimes, and by the time that you've got that on-stage amp feel with something like this, instead of just in-ears, you're actually bringing as much stuff to the gig as you would have been if you just used the traditional amp anyway. And that for me is why this is basically interchangeable with a real amp in my rig, because I can either use this to give me the same as what's going to front of house, or I can split off before the cab and just go into a normal amp and cab. And I think I find that a little bit more enjoyable in a lot of ways. In some ways it's easier to get more level out of a normal amp, and you don't have the feeling like, is that a real amp? But this is really a pretty good experience as well. If you get close to it, it's definitely moving quite a lot of air, and partly I guess due to that closed back design, that might be part of it. I'd like to see an open back design from them, to be honest. I tend to use open back cabs more, and I don't know, that might have a bit more of an open sound, and maybe a more open mid-range. I don't know, how does that work? Let me know in the comments. You know, does a closed back cab have a bit more scoop to it or something, and a bit more bass push? Yeah, or you could try the FR10, which I guess might be another option for having slightly less bass and more mid-focus. But as I say, yeah, it's not that far off from taking a real amp with you, right? And in which case you can kind of noodle it for yourself, but I quite like the idea of having a hybrid rig where on stage I'm getting the real tube sound, and front of house gets the kind of idealized modeler sound, so that I've got that blend. And then not only that, but you've got that more complex sound where it's kind of dual source because you've got a different amp and a different model. I think that's not a bad idea, actually. When you think about dual amp rigs, they generally aren't the same amp twice, right? You have 2 different amps doing slightly different things in the spectrum. It's quite a nice idea. The reason that works quite easily for me is because I normally go mono to front of house, and I normally have a pedal platform style rig in my modeler where everything goes in front of the amp and cab. So it works quite nicely with this sort of setup. So that works nicely. I wanted to kind of do a video on the FR12 because that's about a year that I've had one now, and it's been, I think, the best FR solution I've tried. I got sent a power cab by Line 6, and that was okay, but not as well built, and had menus and stuff like that, nowhere near as simple to just get things set up and going as this. I was doing stuff in my modeler to try and compensate for bits and pieces. None of that with this. Just set the EQ for the room and away you go. Just make sure you're giving it plenty of level. I've tried some red sound stuff. That was great again, but expensive and a little bit more towards the PA speaker type of thing. So yeah, I just wanted to shout this out. Let other folks know in the comments your experience with the FR12. Do you like it? Do you hate it? I'd love to know your thoughts. I think they've even fixed the hiss thing that was a problem for some users. So coming out of the factory now, they have a fix, which I think they stole off of Lysander, right? I'll catch you in another video soon. If you've got other FR recommendations, please let folks know in the comments. This I bought. I don't have anything to do with Fender. So just making a video because it's been a good experience for me. And if I was thinking of trying to get a modeler sounding loud live, then this would be kind of my way to go out of the gate. I would probably just jump straight for this, and it's in that mid-range of FR stuff where you're not paying a crazy amount of money, and you're not paying too cheap to get something quality. I think it's priced just about right. Cheers for stopping by.